Boker Tov, Chodesh Tov. Today's daf is Daf Samach in Zbachim as we learn for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael. Welcome back, Michael. Says the Mishnah. Now we have it in the Mishnah. You see it in the beginning of the Mishnah is in parentheses. In the Mishnah, it's actually brought down at the end of the Mishnah, but the idea is the same. Kol Psulin, people who are puzzled to do the avoda, like a zar or a person who's tamei. A zar means a non-kohen. Shemolku, if they did malika some psula. The malika is no good. The ein matam beisabliya. Let's understand something. We've said this many times. Normally, an animal that's dead without shchita is called an avela. An avela of an animal, a four-legged animal, is matami if you touch it, if you carry it. A bird, a special pasuk is learned out. Va'ochel minivlasam matame begodim. Pasuk says va'ochel matame is begodim shalav. That's not exactly the quote, but the pasuk says something like that. Teaches us when it comes to an avela of a kosher bird. That's an of tahor. Tahor means kosher, what we call kosher, a bird that you can shecht and eat, as opposed to a non-kosher bird, like an ostrich or something that you can't eat, a stork, whatever. Okay, so a non-kosher bird, if it's an avela, it died without shchita, then it's only metame your begodim if it's in your throat. That's the only time it's matame. If it's in your throat, then it's matame what's on you. You can't be matame other people, but it's matame if it's on you. It's matame you and what's in your throat. Okay, that's an avela, an animal that died without shchita. Now we've been talking about malika. By kachim, there's a special halach in the Torah that when it comes to birds, and it's a kachim bird, it's a ola or chatos, either a tor or ben yonah. They translate that as a dove or a pigeon, whatever. Okay, when do you in the Beis Hamikdash? You don't do regular shechita, you do malika. What is malika? You break the animal's neck from the back, and we said you either sever one simon or two, depending if it's a chatos or an ola, and you break the animal's neck, and then if it's a chatos, the kohen could eat it, and that's how you do the avodah. If it's an ola, you burn the whole thing, but that's what malika is. But technically, malika is not shechita. It's not severing it from the neck, from the front of the neck, but it's from the back, the nape of the neck. And technically, that's not shchita, and therefore it's really an avela. In other words, the rule is a malik. Let's say you do malik on a chicken. You have a chicken, you want a chicken for Shabbos, right? And you took a chicken, you did malika. It's an avela. You didn't do shchita. But there's a, right? You didn't do shchita. It's malika. And a malika of a regular bird makes it into an avela. So if it's an avela, is it metame begodim abesa bli? If it's an avela, it's a special rule. Even though malika was done on a kachim bird in the Beis Hamikdash and was done by a non-kosher person like a zar or a tamei or a tful yom, something like that, the malika is no good. But you know what? It does enough that it's not metame begodim basically. It's not tamei. It's an avela. It's an avela, but it's not metame basically. Meaning, like we said, let's say you do shchita improperly. Even though the shchita was done improperly, so technically it's an avela, but at least it's matayah, the shchita is matayah that it's not an avela in terms of being the avela of tar, being matame in the base of bliya. So that's our whole discussion over here. So it's called, so number one, we're talking about kol psulin. If a non-kosher person did malika, the malika is no good because it has to be done by a kohen. Remember, shchita of an animal, even in the Beis Hamikdash of kachim, can be done by a zar. We've learned that, right? Shchita can be done by a zar, not malika. Malika has to be done by a kohen. He takes his right thumb nail and he severs either one siman or two, depending if it's a chatos or an ov. But even though the malika is no good if it was done by a zar, let's say, or we'll see, we're talking, psulin generally means a person who's tamei. We'll see whether it applies to a zar or not. That's a machlokas in the Gemara. But it does enough that the bird is not matam beis bliya. Molek b'smol, says the Mishnah. Let's say the kohen did malika with his left hand, or b'layla, or at night. All shchita kabbalah zrika, or in this case malika and zrika, what has to be done only during the day. By yom, it says. All right, or shachat chulin b'fnim kachim. Let's say you did chulin inside the Beis Hamikdash and you didn't do malika. What do you do with a bird? You have to do malika in the Beis Hamikdash. Let's say you took a chulin bird, a chicken, whatever, and you shechted it inside the Beis Hamikdash, or kachim bachutz, or you shechted kachim outside the Beis Hamikdash, but shchita, not with malika. In other words, shchita alone, even if you did it wrong. Meaning, even if you did it he did it malika with his left hand, or he did it at night, where it's not kosher, or he shechted chulin inside the Beis Hamikdash, or he shechted even kachim outside the Beis Hamikdash. We're talking about birds where you don't do shechita, you do malika, but the shechita does enough that it's metahir the bird, that it's not metam, it's not considered like an avela that's metam beis abliya. That's the point over here. It's an avela, but it's not an avela that's metam beis abliya. It kashers it in that aspect of it. Okay, that all those so far, we say that if he did malika by a non-kosher person, or he did it wrong, or he did shechita on a kachim bird, which is supposed to do malika, but all these things do enough that it's not metame begodim bevesibly. It's not tame like a regular nevelos of tahor. Says that is the last line in the Mishnah on Samach Chesem and Aleph. Molek besakin. Let's say you did malika with a knife. That's no good. Malika has to be with his thumbnail, with the Kohen's right thumbnail. That's no good. You know what it means? You didn't even do malika. That means did you do shechita? No, shechita is from the front of the neck where you get the siman right away. If you do it with a knife, it's no good for a number of reasons. It's not shechita either. Why? Because you broke the animal's neck. Meaning you did, number one, several reasons are brought down. Number one, because it's one of the psulim of shechita. One of them is chaluda. To be machleb, it means you thrusted it in. You did it without seeing. Let's say you're doing regular shechita on an animal, and you can't see what you're doing. You just stuck the animal, stuck it in, and you can't see. That's called machled, meaning you're just thrusting, you're pushing it in without seeing it. Or dores. Dores means you're pressing it down. The shechita has to be done with cutting. Has to be cutting a nice slit cut, not with pressing down or with thrusting inside without seeing it. So when you do the sakin, when you do it with a knife, you can't see what you're doing because the bones there knock it off. You see a shechita on a regular animal, you're doing it in the front. The trach and the esophagus are immediately available to the shochet. But if you're doing it with a knife, with a knife, a malika on the back of the neck, that's not even malika. So it's not malika, not shechita, and therefore you've got a dead bird, which is an avelis of tor, which is matamid bebeis abliya, because you haven't even done malika. See, in the cases before, we said, okay, you did malika, but you did it with your left hand. You did it at night. Or you shechted it where you should have done malika. Fine. But you did shechita, you did malika, right? So at least it does something that it's not matam beis abliya. But if you did malika with a knife, that's not malika. Or malak chulin b'fnim. Let's say you did malika on the inside. Inside meaning inside the azara. Well, if I do malika on a chicken, what did I just say? What do you got here? You got a dead chicken. It's an avela. There's no such thing as malika. Malika basically makes it an avela. You're killing, it's like blowing its brains out. If you blow the brains out of any animal, you've killed it without shechita. It's not kosher. You can't eat it, right? But, well, you did malika on chulin, that's the same thing, except there's a special halacha that the Torah said by kachim, malika is the way that you make the bird fit to offer it on the mizbeach and for the Kohen to eat it. But if it's chulin, malika of chulin, no, malika of chulin is a regular avela. Or kachim b'chutz, or let's say you did kachim outside, you were makdish an animal or a bird. We're talking here about birds, right? You were makdish a bird, and you never even brought it into the Beis Hamikdash. And there you did malika outside, or Torah and Shali Gizman. The pasuk says the kind of species that are kosher for either a chatas oaf or an olas oaf is either Toran or Bnei Yonah. Now, I'm not sure what the translations. We said they translate Toran as doves and Bnei Yonah as pigeons, but the fact that one's called Toran, one's called Bnei Yonah, tell them that Toran are only when they've reached a certain age, and Bnei Yonah is only before they reach that certain age. The Gemara will talk about it later in Zbachim and Chulin. The certain age is when the feathers around the neck become golden, become yellowish golden, whatever. But the point is that if the Toran are not of age and the Bnei Yonah are past their age, again, those are no good. You can't bring them in all as karbanos. So if you did malik on them, it's no good, and it's still an avail self tor. It's matam beis abliya. Shiaf shagapa. Let's say the feathers have dried up, or shnismas eina, or its eye is poked out or cut out. Now here we're saying over here, v'shenik de raglo, or its leg is cut off, because these are not kosher lechatchila to be brenas karbanos. Even though we said many times that ain't Thomas v'zachrus when it comes to bird. We mentioned it yesterday. A bird there's no union of male or female. By animals there is, right? A regular chatas is a kizbar seira. Chatas of a nasi is a sa'ir, is a male. Right, all karbanos sibor are are males. So it depends if it's male or female. We talk about four-legged animals. When it comes to birds, makes no difference male or female. Also makes no difference if they have a mum. What are we talking about? Like a mum, like cataracts or something like that. But if they're missing a limb, like a cut off leg or missing an eye or the wings have dried up, that's the pasuk that says, would you bring something like this to the king? You wouldn't bring it to a king. So because of that, we answer those kind of things also, right? Would your king like some sort of an offering like that? So in these cases, in all these cases, these are matam beisablia because this is mamish nevela. This is mamish nevela. This is not a fit carbon at all. Here's the general rule. If the animal was fit when it came into the Azara, and then something happened, the Kohen used his left hand, he did it at night, something of that sort. He did shchita instead of malika, but it came into the Beis Hamikdash in a fit state, then it's not matam beisablia. Lo yipsul kosh. If it was possible before, the bird wasn't the right age, you couldn't bring it in lechatchila. The bird was missing a limb, right? You did it with a sakin, you did it with you did something like that, or a kachim b'chutz where you didn't even bring it into the Beis Hamikdash. It wasn't in the Beis Hamikdash properly. Sakin, the reason is because he didn't do malika or shchita there. But the other thing is, if the psul was before it came into the Beis Hamikdash, then it's matam beisablia and it's a considered avela. What about zar? Now we said in the Mishnah, beginning of the Mishnah, and the Mishnah says at the end of the Mishnah, kol psul of a person who's puzzled to do the avoda. A person who's puzzled to do the avoda, like a person who's tameh, or we'll talk about a zar, a person for whatever reason he wasn't allowed to do it. A woman, let's say, could not do if they can't do malika, then malika is puzzled, but it's not matam beisablia because technically, like we said, the animal did come into the azar properly, and malika was done. It was just done by a puzzled person. So we said it's not matam beisablia. What about a zar? Amarav. Small v'layla, and we saw this in the Mishnah. Small v'layla ain't matam beisablia because at least there was malika there. Zar v'sakin matam beisablia. Now we said by sakin, used a knife, you didn't do malika at all because you didn't do shchita, you didn't do malika. Right? Malika is only by definition, only with the Kohen's right thumb. What about a zar? So Rav says that a zar also is matam beisablia because a zar is no good. It's like there was no malika there at all. So Gemara says, "Ma'ishna small this leach sheir." Why is the left hand okay? This leach sheir be Yom Kippur because the Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol, he has to do everything himself. So he has to take the pan, the fire pan, the shovel, whatever you want to call it, with the coals, and he takes that with his left hand. So he has room for the blood in his right hand, or the ketores in his right hand. He has room for. So there on Yom Kippur, right? He takes the. And that's the machbi min of a kaf b'smal. Right? He takes the fire pan, and the kaf is like the shovel in his left hand. Right? So he takes the incense, let's say, in his right hand in the pan, and he takes it in the left hand. So why do you say the left hand is okay when it comes to malika? That it's not matame begarim beisabli. It's not matame. Why? Because on Yom Kippur you find that the left hand can be used. And Laila, what is good at night? At night you could be makriv the varim of an ola and the darim, the fats of all animals, right? So you find that left hand sometimes does work in the Beis Hamikdash by Yom Kippur, and nighttime works all year round for being makter those things, for burning the varim and the darim. So if the small and the small and Laila are okay in terms of that, it's not that the carbon is not tameh, is not metame. So zar nami is lechsher b'shchita. So zar also here you find the heter because a zar could do shchita on a four-legged animal all year round. The answer shchita is lav avodi, as we said before. Shchita is not an avoda. Now he doesn't really. It's not an avoda because we call it as one of the avodas, but technically it's not an avoda. Even if it is an avoda, it's not a sheirut. It doesn't have the same rules as kabbalah lach and zrika, which require a kohen. So shchita is not an avoda. Big more below, it's not from Rav Zera. Shchita is para bizar psula. The shchita of a paraduma has to be the Maya Kohen. Why? So you see that that it is an avoda. Rav and Rav showed on that. He said on that Elazar Rechuka is Elazar Rechuka. It says by Paraduma Elazar a Kohen, and it says Chuka. Those Chukas Torah. So therefore, it's got to be with the Kohen. So you see over here. Why do you say that it's not an avoda? You see Shchita of a par is dafka with the zar, and because it says dafka Elazar Kohen, and it says Chuka. It's a shiny para kashi barakabayasi. It's not really kashi kashim. After all, it's not brought in the Beis Hamikdash. It's brought on Haraz Asim. Par the kache, par is different because it's only bedek bodies. It doesn't have the same kedusha as kedusha zaguf. Isn't it a kal v'chomer? Kache bedek bayis balkun. If kache bedek bayis, which is not kache, which is not the same hegdish, right? It's not kedusha zaguf as what, and still requires a kohen. Kache mizbeach mi boy. So certainly requires a kohen, and therefore you could say, how could you say that shchita is not an avoda? If it requires a kohen, we said shchita is not an avoda. What do you mean? But shchita is possible. It's with the zar is no good. That shows you that it is an avoda. So you say no, it's only bedek abayis, but it's a kal v'chomer. Says Rav Shesha Braid Ravina. No, it's not a kal v'chomer. Immediately have amaros to go. I'm the lava voting. There are things that require a kohen, which is not an avoda. Like a kohen has to check if you have a tsaras in your house, right? If it's tsaras on your body, you have to come into the kohen and check it. That's not an avoda. It's not dafki even in the base. It's not in the base of mikdash. Comes to your house, right? Does a house call. A boy kohen still requires a kohen, even though it's not an avoda. So the fact that it requires a kohen, don't tell me from paraduma. Paraduma requires a kohen. It's only bedek abayis, fine. But even if you say that it's kohen, but the fact that it requires a kohen does not mean that it's an avoda. So the Gemara says v'neof mi bama. At the time of Nov and Givon, when they were allowed to bring korbanos on an altar in their backyard, and there you say over there zar could do it. So why don't you say that just like a zar could do it on the bama, so a zar could also, if he does malika, even though it's puzzle in terms of the malika, but it shouldn't be tameh. It says mi bama lo yol. If you don't learn from Bala, and Rashi says the bama is like chol gabi beis hamikdash. So you don't learn from there. You don't learn from bama. Bring marvelo. You don't learn from bama. Vatani you learn menayin liyotze. What happens if you have a carbon that you brought, you did shchim azar, and then it left, you took it out of the azar for some reason? She'im Allah lo yere. That if you put on this beach lo yere. All these things that we're talking about here, this whole discussion about the malika was improper, one way or another, but it's not matam be'esablia. Why? Because we were going to find later on in the Masechta and later on in this parak also that the reason is because im alu lo yerdu, these karbanos, which are puzzle really, technically are not yotze, but if you put it on this beach, you don't bring it down because it has some kedusha to it. So the same way, it's not matame. So the same thing he says over here. We don't learn from Bama. If a carbon left the Azara, Shim Ola, and then came back in, oh, that's possible. But if you put it on the Mizbeach, let's say to burn if it's an Ola, you shouldn't take it down. Why? Shere Yotze, Kosher Bama. So you do learn out from Bama. By Bama, obviously everything is Yotze because it's all, there's no Azara there. You're doing it in your backyard. Shere Yotze, Kosher Bama. So you see, you do learn out from Bama to Avoda in the Beis Hamikdash, just like by the bama, it's all outside and yet it's kosher. So here too, if a carbon left the base of each, left the azara, and you brought it back in, you can put on the azara. So you see, you do. The answer is the Tana doesn't learn it out from bama. The reason he says that Molo Yerid is because Azos Torah Sa'ol Samach. He relies on the limud. It's an asmachta from those Torah Sa'ola that all karbanos. Once it's in the Torah, those Torah, all karbanos are the same in that sense that even if it left the base of Migdash, it's still a carbon, and therefore you leave it on the mizbech. That's all so far. Rav Shita. Rav said that even though we said that Kol Psul and Shemokum Likosim Sula, and Rav is including, is really excluding Zar. Why? Because he says all the Mishnah said Kol Psul and Shemokum Likosim Sula, but ain't matam beisablia. At least it does something that's matam beisablia. Rav says Zar is matam beisablia. That's his point. Zar is like a sak and matam beisablia because it's not really a kosher malika at all. That's Rav's opinion. Rabbi Yochanan disagrees. We have a rule in Shas that Rabbi Yochanan, Rav was like the earliest of the Amoron. We said many places Rav Tanahu Polik. He was the bridge. There was no set time when in those days they didn't say, "Are you a Rishon or Achron?" They all lived at that time. It's like saying, is Moshe Feinstein a Rishon? Is he an Achron? And Rabbi Yoshev is a different Achron. They all lived at the same time. So Rav and Rabbi Yochanan were from the early Amoram or late Taram, and we have a rule: Rav Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan. That's our general rule. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, you don't see it here in the Gemara, in the Tzeichen over here, but that's the general rule. The Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan says, Zar ain't a matameh sabliya. Zar is like a tameh. In other words, it's like all the other psulim that we said that the malika is no good, but at least it accomplishes something that the bird is not matameh like an avela that would matameh beis sabliya. Because you put it up on the mizbech, you don't bring it down. Saken matameh beis sabliya. Saken is matameh beis sabliya, like we saw in the Mishnah. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, so we have a machlokes Rav and Yochanan. What does our Mishnah say? Tanan, the Mishnah said, again, in our Mishnah, in our Gemaras, we have it at the beginning of the Mishnah, and the Mishnah is at the end of the Mishnah. Kol hapsul and shemalkum l'kasam sula. Right? All the people who are puzzle, and if they did malika, the puzzle do avoda, they did malika sula. So Bishlam Yochanan kol asuye zar. Okay, even including a zar. The malika is puzzle, but yet it's not matam beis abliya. El Rav, according to Rav, kol asuye. What is kol asuye? What does it come to include? Right? It says lav lasuye small v'layla. Maybe it's coming to exclude small v'layla, but small v'layla b'hediktani. He said it explicitly. The Mishnah said that malak b'small o v'layla. In all these cases, it's not matam beis abliya. So how can you tell me that all these things that the kol includes that? That says it explicitly. It says tani b'hadar mefarish. Okay, you could say like this. Rav will say that kol hapsul and shemalkum l'kasam sula. What's it referring to? Bismol or belayla. That ain't matam beis abliya. But zar would be matam beis abliya. So that's who we disagree. Tashma, another proof. Ze'aklal, the end of the Mishnah. Kol shu psul b'kodesh. If the psul was in the Azara meeting. The animal was fit when it came into the Azara. The bird was fit when it came into the Azara, and then something went wrong. Somebody wrong did it, or something they did some wrong in the procedure. That's not matam beis abliya. At least it did that because it came into the base of came into the Azara properly. Then something happened wrong. So even if you can't, the carbon is no good, but it's not matam beis abliya. Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan kol asuye zar. Oh, very good. So Rabbi Yochanan says zar is included in that it's not matam beis abliya. Right? El Rav l'simai. According to Rav? What does that include? You've already listed everything else. What does it come to? What does it come to include? Kol shu psulkash ein matam beis abliya. Well, Rabbi Yochanan says it includes the zor. That's not matam beis abliya. But according to Rav, that zor is matam beis abliya. What does it come to include? It says ul tamech. According to your reasoning, shelo yipsul b'kodesh l'simai. What does the very end of the Mishnah say? Kol shelo yipsul b'kodesh matam beis abliya. What is that? What does that come to include? El reisha l'asuye shchitas kachim b'fnim. I'll tell you what it's coming to include. Let's say you shechted a kachim bird that you shechted inside the Azara. You're supposed to do malika, not shchita. You know what? But shchita also is mataret that it's no good. The animal is puzzled because a kachim chatas or ola bird has to be done with malika. If you did shchita, if it would be a chicken outside your house, for you're having for Shabbos, that's kosher. But in the base of Mikdash, it has to be malika. But you know what? The shchita of kachim b'fnim at least does that. The shchita is mataret that it's not matam beis abliya. Seifa, which says what? That if it's not the psul was not in the base of Mikdash, it's matam beis abliya. Seifa lasuye malikas chulim b'chutz. If you shechted malika outside, you did malika of chulin outside. Again, like you did malika, take a bird today, take a chicken or a turkey or whatever bird you eat, right? Whatever else the Jews eat, and you did malika on it. That's matam beis abliya because it's mamish nevela. You didn't do shchita. There's a general rule. The rule is malikas chulin is nevela. It's a regular nevela. It's like you blew its head off. It's like you took a gun and shot it. Tanya Kavasa Rabbi Yochanan, a proof to Rabbi Yochanan. Here we have a proof to Rabbi Yochanan. Again, probably halachas like Rabbi Yochanan. Mocha zar, mocha psul. Let's say a zar did the malika, or a puzzle person did the malika. A psul could be like a person who's tamei, right? Or a pigel b'nasar tamei. If the bird was forbidden for some other reason, it was pigel b'nasar, or the animal became tamei. Aim etamen v'esabliya. All these things I'm saying. So this is a proof to Rabbi Yochanan that a zar is like the other psulim. That even though the animal is not fit now, you're not yotze the carbon that you had to bring, but it's sometimes abliya. Amar Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak said a new thing. Shemati shtaim. I heard two halachas. Achas kmitza zar. One about the kmitza that it does zar. What is kmitza? By a mincha. We've learned it many times. You take the fistful of flour or pita bread, whatever the carbon mincha, whatever form the carbon mincha took. The Kohen has to take kmitza. We said that's one of the most difficult things because he has to take it with his thumb, with his fist like this, and then rub off the top and bottom. It's got to be even. So he says kmitza. If a zar did it, that's only also that's like even though the kmitza is equivalent of shchita, but just like the malik is also the equivalent of shchita, but it's got to be done by a Kohen. Kmitza has to be done by a Kohen. It says kmitza zar. Ba'achas I heard one halacha about kmitza zar, and ba'achas malika zar, and I heard one halacha about the malika zar. Achas tered. One I heard that if you put it on the base of Mikdash, you put it on the mizbeach, you bring it down because it's really no good. The achas lo tered. One is even if it's puzzle, they're both puzzle, but you don't bring it down. I don't know which one's which. That's what Rabbi Yitzchak said. Amar Chizkiah said, I'll solve it for you. Mistavra, Kemitza Tered. Probably if you did Kemitza with a Zar, that's so bad that if you put it on the mizbeach to burn, you put it on the Torah on the mizbeach to burn it, you take it down. Malika lo tered. Malika of Azar, not so bad. Like we saw, like Rabbi Yochanan said, that Malika of Azar is not matam beis abliya. It's not so bad. That probably doesn't come. The Gemara says, why? What's the difference? Maishna Malika, the Yeshna Babama, right? Like Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, when he said that Zor is okay, he talked to learn out. Rashi said, the Alfinami Bama. Remember, Rav said, don't learn out from Bama, because Bama is like Chol Gabe Mikdash. But Rabbi Yochanan said that Malika of Azar is not matam beis abliya because you learn out from Bama. So he says, why Maishna Malika, the Yeshna Babama, and that's why if Azar did it, it's not so bad, meaning it's not matam beis abliya. Kamitza Nami Yeshna Babama. Kamitza also was done by the Bama, but he came ein mincha. Maybe you'll tell me what, boy, they didn't bring carbon minchas at the Bama, right? If that's the case, ein office nami Bama, then there's no birds there either. There was no Malika there either. Dam Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes says this later on. The Divrei Yomi Yesh Mincha, the one who says that at the time of the Bamos, they were able to bring mincha. Right? They were also able to bring birds. Yeshavas Bama. The Divrei Yomi Mincha, the one who says ein mincha because it says zbachim. Right? They said zbachim. Rashi says Divrei Yomi Perach Rabbi Yehuda ein mincha b'mama because it says vayizbechu zvachim shlamim b'asin. In other words, when there was no Beis Hamikdash, they can only bring zvachim, which usually means shechita of a four-legged animal. So the one who says ein mincha, there's also no birds there. My time is zvachim. It says zvachim v'lo mincha, zvachim v'lo ofas. That means only four-legged birds. So don't tell me. So he says, what's the reason? So why does he say that kamitza you take down from the zbech if it was done by Zar, but malika you don't take it down from the zbech if it was done by Zar? Why? So if the reason is because what's the reason why Malika is better? Because what? Because there's in the Bama, so Kamitza is nami also in the Bama. You'll tell me there's no Kamitza there, then there's no Malika either. Ela Ema, what's the reason? Ein Kiddush b'kli sharis b'mincha b'Bama. In the Beis Hamikdash, how do you do Kamitza? You take the fistful, you put it in a kli sharis, you take it to the mizbeach, and you put it on the mizbeach. And the Bama, if they held that they did do a mincha, there was no klisharis there. Whereas by Malika, there's no klisharis. You just do the Malika and you throw the blood on the mizbech, either with the mitzvah or with zrika. And Rashi explains here in the beginning of the narrow lines, ein kiddush kli sharis b'mincha. Why? Hilkach lo yafin and zar b'mikdash inyan kamitza. You can't learn kamitza mizar b'mama. You can't learn the lodami hach kamitza lach kamitza. Not the same kind of kamitza. The mikdash hol mikdash b'kli sharis ifsal b'zar. Ah, very good. And if a zar put it in kli sharis, that's no good. So I can understand that kamitza in the base of mikdash is no good, and you bring it down. You want to learn from kamitza but the bama, it's not the same. Mitzvah, the bama was not put in a klisharis. In the base of mikdash, put in a klisharis. And if a zar put in a klisharis, that's really bad. Whereas opposed to Malika, you could learn enough from the Malika of a zar, Malika of the Bama. Just by Malika of a Bama, a zar could do it. Malika of the base of Mikdash, a zar could it's at least good enough that it's not matamed the base of Liya, even though technically, the carbon is no good, and you'd have to bring another one in its place. All right, we'll stop here. Tomorrow's daf starts from the two dots, daf samach tes. And that'll take us to the very end of Shabbos' daf. It's really in the middle of an inyan, but that's where we stopped last time. Last time we stopped mamash at the end of the daf. We didn't have time to continue on. So on Sunday morning, we will pick it up in Mirz Hashem from the beginning of Ayin, the very top of daf Ayin. Shabbat shalom b'chodesh tov l'kulam.
Shabbat shalom.
There were no clay sharia at the opposite.
At the Bamas, yeah.
But so how did they do anything?